Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
And we're back after a couple weeks off for the, holidays throughout December and the beginning of January. We apologize if you were looking forward to some episodes during the last couple weeks, but we kind of took a much needed break, to spend time with our friends and family. But we are back here for episode 159 of the Last Round Podcast. Hopefully you're listening to us once again. Hopefully you didn't go away from your listening habits, but we are back. But jumping straight into it so we can give you our takes on the boxing world. We do have a special guest, our first guest of 2022. He's actually fighting this upcoming weekend at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino in Verona, New York, on ESPN and BT Sport in the UK against Joe Smith Jr. He wasn't the original opponent for Joe Smith Jr., but he ended up getting the opportunity. Steve Geffrard joins us this week. I hope I said that right. We just asked you before. I hope I said it right, man. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, that works. How you guys doing?
Good, man. So we just asked you. So you're about to be in New York for this upcoming Saturday's bout. But before we kind of jump into the whole Joe Smith, how you landed that fight, how the call went down, how they contacted you, for some listeners who might be listening right now, who might not be aware of your background and your career so far in the boxing world. Can you tell us how you first became involved in boxing, and if you started like as a child and your amateur career?
Oh yeah. I started boxing when I was 13 years old in South Florida. I started boxing at a police athletic league, and I kind of just walked into a gym. I had got cut from a football tryout, walked into a gym that was a PAL, which is like a free program for kids. And I was going to go in there and lift weights. And I seen those like wrestling mats and boxing gym area. My friends were already boxing at the time. So I just went over to the boxing side and, I fell in love with the sport, from there. So, I started boxing 13. Then I started winning a couple national tournaments at a young age. And, that carried on to the Junior Olympics and also to me being on the national team and fighting in the men's open division, winning multiple national tournaments there. So, that's pretty much how it is. Just kind of walked into a gym one day and fell in love with the sport, and just work hard and just stuck with it.
Steve, when I was doing the homework for you coming on, I read that you actually won a rare triple crown in the US amateurs, which contains obviously the Golden Gloves, USA Boxing National, and the National PAL titles.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was a real busy year. I think that year the only person I lost to was like a close decision to Clemente Russo in his homeland of Italy. But that was a big year for me. And I was fighting at heavyweight with bigger people, but I did very well that year. Great year of boxing for me.
I also read that you consistently had a few battles with Michael Hunter in the amateurs.
Oh yeah, man, he's a tough guy. Very fast, slick guy. Obviously he's bigger than he's actually a heavyweight. I guess he's considered a small heavyweight in the pros, but yeah, he's a good fighter, man. He's been looking good lately too since he's moved up to heavyweight. He's given some of those big guys some trouble.
Besides a Michael Hunter, Steve, is there any other notable names who you came up with during your amateur days?
Not that I fought. You mean just like that were in tournaments with me?
Yeah. Maybe somebody. I mean, you don't necessarily have to share the ring with him, but somebody who was maybe at the same tournament you were, or you were around.
Oh yeah, like Earl Spence, Joe Diaz, Erickson Lubin, who lives down the street from me, Teofimo, he lives in Florida too. And all those guys, Javante, we were all in the amateurs together, like, traveling and stuff like that, you know. And, you know, I go to almost every major fight, so I'm always hanging out with these guys and seeing them. And me and Erickson, we both trained with Kevin Cunningham. So, yeah, but I'm always in the mix with all these boxers. I'm seeing them every tournament I'm hanging out with. I mean, every major fight that we have, Vegas, wherever, New York, I'm attending those fights and I'm seeing those guys. So I keep in touch with everybody.
When you were coming up, Steve, out of all those guys or any of these guys who are now pros that you saw in your amateur days, or not necessarily fought, but, you know, were around the same time, was there anybody that caught your eye that you knew, okay, that guy, when he gets to the pros, he's going to make a lot of noise?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys. I mean, some surprised me a lot more than others, but but I always knew, like, Earl Spence, you know, he'd go up there and be champ for sure. Earl for sure, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of the other guys, like Teo, him beating Teofimo, I've known him since he was like 8, 9 years old, and you know, the way he beat Lemchenko and stuff, like, that was a big win for him, you know. Like, he was just on top of the world. Javante Davis, you know, he was a good amateur and stuff too, but, you know, look at him, he's like a big superstar too, and he's always been exciting, always been a big puncher, and even since a little kid, you know, all those guys are exciting guys. Jose Ramirez, I went overseas with Jose Ramirez and Jojo Diaz on the same trip. We went. Luis Arias, we all went to like the UK. We went to Italy. We fought on a whole bunch of tournaments and stuff. But yeah, a lot of the top guys, we were pretty much all together in the amateurs.
You've been around a lot of these guys that are, you know, currently making all this noise in the pros. In terms of being coached by Coach Cunningham, did you start your career with him, or how long have you been with him?
I didn't. I actually started training with him like before, like, this whole lockdown thing started, you know, with the COVID stuff. So, like, because I was actually preparing for a fight. Well, actually, Erickson Lubin had just moved down. Erickson was staying with me, and he had just moved down because Kevin, his gym was probably like 30 minutes from my house, and I was staying in Delray Beach. So Erickson Lubin had just moved down, and he was just starting to train with Kevin, and I was going to the gym with him. And, you know, when I made my change, I just started working with Kevin, and, you know, it's been a great transition. You know, he's real organized. You know, he has everything planned for you. As long as you do as you're told, you know, you should go into that fight confident. You know, all you got to do is pretty much show up, you know, and he's got from sparring to, you know, strategies, to bag workouts, to the running. Like, he's involved in every aspect of the training.
Steve, I read that you class yourself a bit of a boxing junkie, and so does Kevin. Who were some of the fighters that you look up to when you were coming through?
In the beginning, I watched like a lot of amateur fight. Like, right before I even had a fight, like, I watched like, you know, Mario Kendelon. I've watched like the Rigan Diaz and all the Cuban greats and their footworks and stuff like that. And then, you know, I watch all the old school fighters, and I watch everybody. I mean, I try to take a little piece from everybody, but I just really enjoy boxing. I really enjoy the sport. I like different boxing cultures, like, around the world, you know, how, like, the fans and all that stuff. I take all that stuff into consideration when I'm watching fights and stuff.
Steve, is there somebody? Go ahead.
I said I've also had the pleasure of going to witness other fights overseas and stuff like that too. So that's also been really cool for me too.
You know, Steve, staying on that subject, for fans who've never been to to any events, any boxing events overseas, let's just say our American fans. We have a lot of UK listeners as well, but what do you think the difference, how would you just describe the differences between an overseas event and a United States event?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're going. Like, I've been to a Klitschko fight in Germany where it's, sold out crowd, and, they're kind of quiet, like when the bell rings, and they kind of clap in between the rounds, and then I've been to big fights in the UK. I went to a fight at the O2 Arena, Chisora, Dylan White, where they're just rowdy, throughout the whole event.
That's because they're drunk, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then, I've been to fights in Montreal. I went to a fight in Montreal, Bernard Hopkins, Pascal.
Yeah, Jean Pascal, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was electric over there too. And I've done some commentating as well. And I commentated. Yeah, in Kazakhstan, Kanat, it was like a sold out event there too. And that was, I don't know how much boxing they see there, like professionally. I know amateur boxing is big, but the people there were going nuts. Some of the nicest people. That was a lot of fun working over there.
Steve, since you touched on that, we were going to bring it up. How did that come about? That's a random place to suddenly pop up on a commentary gig.
Yeah, well, there was a show that was happening in my hometown like a few years ago, and I was supposed to fight on that show with Kanat, and Kanat was, I think he was going to be the main event, but I had an injury, so I had to pull out on the show, and I think Fight TV or whoever it was that was had the like licensing right for the show, they asked me if I could commentate, and I guess they thought I did pretty well. And so some of the people that worked with that broadcast company asked me to go over there and work with them. So I thought it was a great opportunity to go to Kazakhstan. When I seen the movie Borat, I was thinking, oh, Kazakhstan's like that. But man, it's a beautiful city. It's a lot of fun and some of the nicest people, that was a very memorable trip for me.
Is that something you'd be interested in, Steve, in maybe like at, years down the line in a commentary game, maybe like a Sean Porter?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that now, like while I box. I mean, I think it's like a win-win. I get to go to all the fights, and I get to also talk about boxing, which I love and do pretty much every day, anyways. So, hopefully, I can make a name for myself this weekend, get this W, and that can open some doors for something like that as well.
Steve, we touched on your pretty stellar amateur career. And then I think I think I'm right in saying you turned pro. I think it was 2013 with Golden Boy.
Yes.
So how did that come about? The whole Golden Boy signing?
Oh, I was working with like Shelly Finkel and this other guy that I knew from Boca Raton. He was working with Shelly Finkel, like they were doing some music stuff. And so that's how I had that connection. And then, I guess Shelly was working with Golden Boy at the time, like 2013. Yeah, I guess they were doing a lot of business and stuff. So, yeah, that's pretty much how I ended up with them.
And then you've also we talked just before we started. We came on air, Steve, that you had sparred in the past Joshua Buatsi. Can you tell us about those experiences and sharing the ring with him in a sparring session?
Yeah, I sparred him at the Olympic Training Center in UK well, this was just recently after the Olympics, but I've trained at that facility before during the amateurs. So it was pretty cool to go back. I was training with Max McCracken in the UK before the lockdown, right before the lockdown and stuff. And that's actually in Birmingham, but I guess his brother who trains Joshua and stuff, trains the people at the Olympic Training Center. So I would go and, maybe once or twice a week, we drive over to Sheffield and get great rounds with Buatsi, who's a really good contender. He's not even a prospect now, he's a contender. Really strong, sturdy, he's a really good fighter, smart fighter. And Yeah, I've had some great rounds with him. Me and him, we've had some really good sparring sessions.
Future world champion?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's been every time out. He seems like he's been winning pretty impressively. Yeah, definitely. I think he can wheel and deal with the best. I mean, he won a Olympic bronze medal. You know, he had stoppages in the Olympics, which is hard to do. So yeah, I think he's a really good boxer. I think he has a bright future, and he's with the right team. You know, he's with Eddie Hearn. I think he's with Joshua's management team. I forget the name of their company.
258.
Yeah, 258. So yeah, he's with the right people, and he's getting the exposure and stuff. UK has the best fans, so yeah, he's definitely on the track to doing some great things.
Steve, do you have a sole promoter right now? I know this weekend's a Top Rank card, but are you promoted specifically by somebody?
Oh no, I'm a free agent.
Okay.
No management or anything. I just have my coach and me.
So is there anybody? Because I mean, you touched on right now Eddie Hearn and you know how he's promoting Buatsi. If, for example, hypothetically, if Matchroom and Eddie Hearn wanted to have a conversation with you about an extended partnership to promote your subsequent fights, would you be interested in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, you know, between Eddie Hearn, Top Rank, and Matchroom, I mean, those are the power three right there in boxing. You know, I'm sure every boxer wants to be involved with those guys. You know, I'm sure most boxers, small promoters, or whatever, they all want to be having some type of dealing with those three major guys. So yeah, you know, that'd be a dream. That'd be amazing, you know.
Can you tell us about Artur Beterbiev? You sparred him in Montreal, I believe, in 2019. How was that experience?
Oh man, yeah, that guy's a beast, man. He's strong. Yeah, I sparred him. I think I was over there for about 5 weeks or so. And yeah, he's real strong, you know. I mean, he's been boxing. Yeah, he's definitely a guy you don't want to fall asleep with. You got to be on your P's and Q's every second of the round. But that guy, he's strong, man. I mean, I could see why nobody's gone the full 12 with him, you know, because I sparred him. He was tough sparring with headgear and 16-ounce gloves on, you know. So, but yeah, he's you could just see it in his eyes. He's out for blood, you know.
I hope they paid you well, Steve, for those 5 weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I've been following him since the amateurs.
Yeah,
you're a big amateur fan then. That's kind of, you've touched on that a few times.
I just watch it all, man. It's nice to find somebody good too that's in the amateurs, and then you kind of follow them through the pros as well. So I follow it all. But yeah, I follow it all, especially the Olympics and stuff. I actually went to watch the Olympic Games in London 2012.
Oh, okay. When AJ won?
Yeah. But yeah, I follow it. I follow all of it, you know. And yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. I think the Olympic Games, they've been getting a little bit more exciting too. They don't have any headgear now and stuff as well. So
Steve, is there anybody right now that's not a pro, that's in the amateurs, you know, trying to make it, that you know about, that you have your eye on, that you're like, okay, I think they're on their way?
Like in my weight class, that are about to turn pro, maybe?
No, just in general, and any weight class. Anybody that caught your eye, like, okay, that kid's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, I seen like from the past Olympics, I saw Ben Whitaker. I think he's from the UK. He got a silver medal. Yeah. I think he's pretty good. There was this one Russian guy. I can't remember if Ben beat him. He's a light heavyweight too, but he didn't win. But he was from like Russia or something. Strong guy. He looks like he was pretty good. There's tons of guys in the US. I mean, they pretty much are probably already turned pro.
Yeah.
But Keyshawn Davis.
Yeah, Keyshawn, those guys. Those guys are already pro. But yeah, those guys are look amazing. You know, right now they look like they have promising futures.
Mm.
It seems like Top Rank just signed
All of them.
the whole Olympic team. I like that heavyweight too. I mean, he's kind of small compared to the heavyweights
Torres,
this day and age.
Richard Torres.
Yeah, but I mean, if he's able to compete at the Olympic level with those guys there, I mean, he's gonna be. I mean, I'm guessing he's gonna be able to wheel and deal with anybody. I know some people that have gone to camp with him and stuff, like in the Olympic Training Center and stuff. I hear he's like one of the fastest runners, you know, in the long distance run.
Really?
Even though that's what I heard. I heard he's like.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard he's like one of the fastest runners in the long distance and stuff.
That's interesting for a heavyweight like that. That's definitely interesting.
Isn't he about 6'2", 6'2" or something?
Yeah,
I
like you
think
said,
around there.
I did wonder when he turned pro whether he was going to be a cruiserweight, just because, you know, a lot of the heavyweights, like you touched on, the giants now, they're like 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". And obviously he's a little bit smaller, but look what Usyk did. So you never know.
Yeah, I mean, he's not fighting like Usyk. Usyk has crazy skills.
Mm.
You know, I thought Beterbiev kind of beat Usyk in that Olympics in London.
Mm-hmm. Really? That's
I heard a story that Beterbiev had to move up to 201 because like I guess in Russia, I don't know, the federation told him he had to move up or he can fight in the Olympics, and then he moved up to heavyweight to 201, and he ended up winning the most outstanding boxer at the World Championships, and then he eventually lost at the Olympics to I think he won a tiebreaker to Michael Hunter, and then lost to Usyk at some point.
Wow.
I thought he won. He dropped Usyk too with a body shot.
Yeah.
Oh wow. That's cool.
You can find that on YouTube. It's a good watch.
Yeah.
Moving on to this Saturday, Steve. You know, you're like we mentioned, you're fighting Joe Smith Jr. in Verona, New York, on ESPN and BT Sport. So you know, as all of our listeners know, that Joe Smith Jr. had a different opponent initially, and then you stepped in. Can you tell us how all that came about? I know you mentioned Coach Kevin Cunningham called you and said, "Hey, you know, you're not going to believe this, but we got an offer." Is that what happened? Can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, you know, I was just sitting in the sauna. I get a call from Kevin, and he goes, "Hey, man, you're not gonna believe this." I was like, "Oh, what?" I'm thinking he's gonna give me some type of bad news or something, and he's like, "Man, they want you to fight Joe Smith for the title." You know, it didn't really kind of even hit me at first. I'm thinking, first he said they want you to fight that boy for the title, for the WBO title. I'm thinking first maybe, because I got a call recently to fight somebody else. So I'm thinking maybe it was like a regional title or something. Then he was like, "No, Joe Smith for the WBO World Championships." And I was like, "What? You know, that's insane, you know?" And yeah, I just couldn't believe it, because I was actually looking forward to watch Joe Smith and Johnson fight. I was going to be watching that fight anyways, because I think both of their styles, you know, would make a great fight.
Who did you favor between them before Callum Johnson had to pull out?
Honestly, that fight, I haven't seen too much of Johnson besides like when he fought Beterbiev, but from what I hear, he could really punch. But I figured, you know, anything could happen at that fight. I would have favored maybe Joe Smith a little bit, just because I've seen more of him. But you know, I think it's and he's been a little bit more active. He's been way more active. I think Johnson's had some stuff like with injuries and stuff going on with him. But I probably would have favored Joe Smith. I think he's a little bit bigger, got size advantage. He's been more active. But, you know, fights like that, they're kind of 50-50. Both guys are coming. They're going to meet each other right in the center of the ring. Could have been fireworks. That was a great style matchup. I was pretty excited to see that.
Were you already training? Because you said you were in the sauna, so I'm assuming you were already training. Were you training for another fight or just staying?
Yeah. I was already training. I was already in the gym and stuff. I mean, I clearly wasn't preparing for a world title fight, but I was in the gym, working out and stuff. So luckily that's what I had going on.
Steve, when you got the news, who's the first person you called to tell?
Erickson Lubin.
What did he say?
Hold on one second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I called Erickson Lubin. I was like, man, you're not gonna believe. I told him exactly what happened. He was like, wow, boxing's crazy, man. Because we always talk about situations like this where people get these calls and sometimes prevail and stuff, or even just get put on the map or whatever. So when I told him, he was like, man, boxing's crazy, man. He's like, yeah, you gotta do that. But it was just perfect because everything just lined up. It's not like I was 20 pounds overweight or anything. I was working out. I'm not just coming off the couch or anything. So it was like perfect situation.
You accepted it straight away as soon as he called?
Yeah. I mean, my coach told me about it. My phone was about to die. I called him back. I was like, let me plug in my phone in, but I just called Erickson real quick. Then I just text my coach. I said, yeah, let's do it. And then he sent me a contract maybe an hour, 2 hours later or so. Or later that day, I signed it right away, sent it back. And boom. That same day, I was already going to get MRI and physicals and all that stuff that they asked me to get. I was already on it.
How does it feel being, days away from, a life-changing experience, life-changing money? Everything changes if you win on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it feels great. I mean, I'm just focused on the task in front of me. I've been fighting my whole life, so, I'm not really thinking about the change or anything like that. I'm just kind of just thinking about just going in there, fighting, having fun, and rising to the occasion and, doing my thing. This is what I do. I've been boxing at a high level since I was 13 years old, so, boxing, this is what I do. I'm just going to go in and do exactly what I do best,
Look at 2021. I think me and Danny have said on other episodes that how many underdogs, won in 2021?
Exactly. Tons. Yeah, it's been tons. It's been a lot of, 2021, I don't know who started it off. I think it was Wilder Fury. They kicked it off, but man,
January.
It was like,
or February. February. I'm sorry. February. Yeah.
It seemed like it was just fight after fight after fight, just great fights.
Because you had Josh Warrington losing to the Mexican lad, and then Kiko Martinez, Usyk. Could go on and on of all the underdog stories.
Yeah. And just a lot of great fights for boxing, period. There have been a lot of great fights. It seemed like a lot of the best matches were made this year, a lot of them. But definitely a lot of upsets. And but hey, that's boxing. That's the excitement of it,
Mm-hmm. Steve, how much of a difference do you think it's going to make for Joe Smith? Because obviously he was training for a Callum Johnson, tailoring essentially his training methods and his techniques for this camp around the style of a Callum Johnson. But then, he has to pull out, and now another type of caliber opponent is pushed in. Like, you as a fighter, when something like that happens, I don't know if it's happened to you or not, when you have an original scheduled opponent and then at the last second or a week or two before they get pulled out, and then you get somebody else who has a different style. How does that affect your training methods going into that fight?
Like I said, I've been boxing my whole life, so I've seen so many different styles and stuff. But, I'm sure it might play some little effect. But regardless of what you've had planned in the gym too, obviously you want to stick as close to that plan as possible. But, things change. You're supposed to be able to make changes on the fly, So you're supposed to make changes on the fly and adjust. You might prepare one total way for a fighter, and then you get in there in the first, second round, something drastic might happen. Now you have to fight a totally different way.
You know, we know obviously you haven't been in the ring with Joe Smith Jr. until this Saturday, but is there anybody that you think you've shared the ring in your professional career with that maybe you think might be similar to him, just watching him on TV and other bouts?
I mean, he's the last guy I fought was pretty aggressive, you know.
That was last March, right? Last March.
Yeah. I mean, he was aggressive and stuff, but I think Joe Smith, he's gotten better over the years. Yeah, he's a tough fight for anybody. Even some of the fights I've seen him lose, you know, he was still right there punching to the last bell. So yeah, Joe Smith is Joe Smith. You know, this is, you know, he seems like a good puncher, tough kid coming forward. I was actually at the fight when he fought Sullivan Barrera. I think he broke his jaw, you know, and he fought through that. So, you know, that just shows you what type of person, what type of fighter he is.
Like Mike was saying earlier, you know, if you do end up getting the victory this Saturday and becoming the WBO light heavyweight world champ, I know you said you're trying not to think about it. You're trying to think about the fight and get through that first. But I mean, essentially, he's right. You know, that is a very life-changing moment in your career because not only would you have a world championship yourself, but you also have somebody like you're also, I guess, essentially in the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes, since Canelo Alvarez is going from essentially middleweight, super middleweight, and light heavyweight. So, you know, what would your reaction to that be? Like, let's just say later on down the line, a Canelo Alvarez bout at light heavyweight for your WBO heavyweight title would be.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that would be insane, absolutely insane. That'd be unreal, you know. Canelo, he's probably he's one of my favorite fighters right now, currently. Yeah, you know what? Like, I know he's talking about moving up to cruiserweight. I don't know if they're still thinking about doing that. I think before he even does something like that, it would make more sense for him to unify like light heavyweight before going up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think me personally, I'd love to see Canelo fight Beterbiev. Could you imagine? I think he's nuts if he did, because he's already accomplished everything. Like, that guy really wants to go in the history books. So for him to even consider a fight like that is insane. Like, I've sparred Beterbiev and like, his power is like real. I sparred Kovalev for multiple camps, but Beterbiev is just different, you know?
Right. Steve, is there a rematch clause for this fight?
No.
Oh, really? There's not. That's interesting. You're not sure. You're not sure.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Like, no, I don't think so though. I didn't see that. I don't remember seeing that, but
take the belts and run, Steve.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you know, obviously, congratulations on getting the fight. I know, you know, you weren't the original scheduled opponent, but like Mike was saying, 2021. I know we're in 2022 now, but 2021 was the year of the underdog. And right now, I think the betting odds do have you as the underdog. But
yeah,
you know, going in as the underdog, what, you know, do you think about that? Do you think about the betting odds, or do you just go in and do your thing?
No, I just go in. I do my thing. You know, I believe in my skills. I think I'm a better boxer than Joe Smith. You know, I just have to go in there and just do me. You know, I can't worry about betting or any future fights or anything like that. I just have to focus on the task that I have in front of me on Saturday. I can't worry about anything else besides that.
Steve, is Lieben gonna throw any money down on you? You're a 7-1 underdog, I've just read.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. Who knows? I'm sure he will. He likes to get in the betting stuff.
Have you ever fought at Turning Stone, Steve?
No, but I've always wanted to go to the Boxing Hall of Fame. I hear it's like a few miles down.
Right. Yeah, well, if you win, you can take those titles on your visit to the Boxing Hall of Fame right there. That'd be a nice little surprise right there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Steve, we know it's fight week for you, so we obviously appreciate your valuable time here on the last round. And good luck this Saturday in your fight against Joe Smith Jr. for the WBO light heavyweight championship of the world on ESPN and BT Sport. Before we let you go, Steve, go ahead and let our listeners know where they can find you and follow you online.
You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's just at Steve Geffrard. STEVEGEFFRARD, and you can find me on all of those, same username.
And then if you have to leave, if you have to make one statement in regards to this Saturday, why people should tune in, what's that one statement?
I'm going to rise to the occasion, put on a great show, and make a great introduction to the boxing world.
You got it. Well, we appreciate your time, Steve. Good luck this Saturday. And if you win or if you lose, hopefully you win, we're obviously everybody's a big fan of the underdog, but we hope you come on again in the future, maybe later on this year, with the belt or without the belt. We'd be happy to have you back, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it.
Thanks,
Take
Steve.
care.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Steve Geffrard. We were trying to figure out how to say his name before we came on air, but luckily he was able to help us pronounce it right. But good luck to him this Saturday. I think that was a good point that you raised, Mike, during the interview, that 2021 was the year of the underdog, and he's a 7-1 underdog for the WBO light heavyweight world title against Joe Smith this upcoming Saturday on ESPN. And if he wins, what a moment that could be, right?
Yeah, I mean, before I did the research today, before obviously when he agreed to come on, and then I started looking at his amateur career. He's got a stellar amateur career. Like, he can definitely box. So that actually convinced me more. I was like, you know what? If he manages to stay away, and box from the outside against Joe Smith, then he stands a good chance. He's been in there with a few different coaches over the years, settled down with Kevin Cunningham. So at 7-1, it's worth throwing a little bit of money on. There's only two guys in the fight. If he manages to stay away, Joe Smith doesn't rise to the occasion because it's a change of opponent. It's not a big name like when he was fighting Callum Johnson, and how many underdog stories have we seen lately? So you know what, 7-1, stick a little bit of money on it. Why not?
I forgot what I was gonna say. I just had it at the tip of my tongue. But anyways, who's actually the bigger guy physically? Is it Joe Smith or is it Steve? I feel like I saw some stats, and I think it might be Joe Smith from the physicality standpoint, because Joe Smith's a big guy. I remember when I first saw him in person, it was when he probably his most famous moment up to date is when he knocked Bernard Hopkins out of the ring at the Forum in LA in Inglewood, California. I was there ringside for that fight. And he's a big guy. I mean, light heavyweight, you're obviously a big guy, but he was bigger than I thought.
According to BoxRec, Joe Smith is 6 foot, and Steve Geffrard is 6'2".
Oh, wow. That's interesting. That is interesting. Okay. I think I agree with you. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup. And then, that's why I asked Steve about, getting late replacement opponents, because didn't we have a fight? I feel like there was one significant fight last year where the original opponent had to pull out, maybe because of COVID or something like that. And then the substitution opponent came in and got the upset win. Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of, obviously that happens a lot, but I feel like last year there was one significant fight where that happened, and that substituted opponent got the win.
Wasn't that the Josh Warrington fight?
Was it when he fought Mauricio Lara?
Wasn't that a last minute change? Am I thinking? Am I wrong?
I can't remember, but I feel like there was one fight last year where I'm sure that happened a couple of times, but like there was one significant fight, they got a lot more attention than the others. Like the underdog who came in as a substituted opponent really made the most of it and got the win.
Yeah, that's the only one that springs to mind when you said it that I can think of. But yeah, I'm sure it happens all the time. I'm sure there's people listening to this now shouting at their headphones.
I know that's true
because we can't think of it.
That's true. But our big thanks to Steve Geffrard for coming on this week as our special guest of the last round. He fights this Saturday on ESPN and BT Sport against Joe Smith Jr. for the WBO light heavyweight world title in Verona, New York. Kind of sticking on that fight. He was initially Callum Johnson pulled out how many weeks ago now?
This week? About a week?
Was it a week? I thought it was at least 2. Oh, miss.
I think it's okay. I've been at work and stuff, so maybe a week or 2. Obviously tested positive, so he couldn't come into the country.
Right.
And then obviously, according to Top Rank, I believe they worked their way down around 12 different opponents. Obviously, people couldn't do it. People couldn't make weight, stuff like that. And then they settled on Steve because he was already in camp for an 8-rounder in Florida. So, right place, right time.
Right. No, absolutely. That's why it's good that he was already in camp training for a fight, for an upcoming bout. So he was already in shape. He was getting in shape. He was working. But it's interesting. It's always interesting to talk about the behind the scenes details like that for promoters, especially for their main events. Because we know that when there's a main event, especially whoever their champion is or what have you, there's always opponents and substitution opponents in the shadows that the promoter tells, like, hey, even if they don't have a fight upcoming, or they might have a fight on the undercard of that event, but they tell them like, hey, just in case we need you, just stay ready. But it doesn't seem like this happened with Steve Geffrard. It looks like maybe Top Rank already kind of knew that he was already training for an upcoming bout, and he was on that list. I'd be intrigued to know if they reached out to anybody else before they reached out to him, or was he the first contact?
According to an article I read, I think it was by friend of the show, Corey Erdman, I think he reached out, or Top Rank made a statement, and they said that they'd worked their way down around a dozen opponents.
Oh, wow.
I know that there was obviously people from the UK were kind of disappointed because Anthony Yard was actually on vacation in Dubai, so he couldn't step in. And I know that Craig Spider Richards actually posted something like, bags packed, I'm ready to go. Like he was trying to get himself into the picture, which would have been a great opponent. Obviously, wasn't that long ago that he fought Bivol, and really,
that was a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, if he had kind of more confidence and had grown into the fight a little bit quicker, I think the fact that it was a world title, he's fighting Bivol, like the first couple of rounds, he was a little bit timid, and then he grew into the fight and probably took over.
Right.
So I mean, that would, in my opinion, that would have been a better opponent, but maybe too late in the day for a completely different stylistic type of fight for Joe Smith Jr. But you're world champion. You need to defend it against all comers, right? You're a gladiator. So,
do you think Anthony Yard would realistically, if he was in shape or training already, or what have you, or not on vacation in Dubai, do you think realistically he would have stepped in? I don't think so. I really don't. The only connection there is wait, Anthony Yard, is he promoted by Frank Warren?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously Frank Warren, Top Rank,
yeah.
They have, relationship there. So that helps the situation, but I still don't think somebody like Anthony Yard would have stepped in as a late replacement, even if he was already training. I just don't think so.
I think you're probably right because Anthony Yard seems to be, one of Frank Warren's golden lights in the stable. And Frank Warren has already kind of said that, Callum Johnson isn't necessarily going to get the next shot at Joe Smith, which leads me to believe that I think that Anthony Yard, he's kind of like a big following, sponsored by Adidas and stuff like that, that he's probably going to try to throw in Anthony Yard next time that, Joe Smith Jr. gets a chance to, have a voluntary or something like that. So it looks like, Callum Johnson may have missed the bus here. If Anthony Yard is one of those obscure people that, has to take it because it's not necessarily going to come around again, then yeah, I think he would have done. But I think he's a big enough name in that stable that he knows, like, this will come again in 4, 5, 6 months. I don't need to, just bite this off.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, hey, but Top Rank's lucky that they secured an opponent and Steve Geffrard. Good luck to him. Obviously, regardless of who people cheer for or they root against, it's always exciting in the boxing world when the underdog in the betting odds, especially, ends up getting the win. Especially if they get the win in a exciting fashion, like a KO or a stoppage or something like that. Because if Joe Smith Jr. wins this Saturday, everybody who's watching, the hardcore boxing enthusiasts will be saying, oh, well, that was expected. He should have won. He should have retained his title and kept it to get a bigger matchup with like Artur Beterbiev or maybe another Callum Johnson later this year. But if Steve Geffrard wins and becomes the WBO light heavyweight world champion, that's huge. That's big news. That's big news. And I know he wasn't sure if there was a rematch clause. He said no at first, but then he was like, well, I'm not sure. I would think there is, right? I mean, yeah. I would think that's how it works, especially with a late replacement opponent. I would think there's a rematch clause, right?
I would imagine so. And it's so crazy now that when you do interviews, you have to throw that question in because everybody's so intrigued about whether there's rematch clauses in certain fights and stuff like that. So it's kind of just the boxing world we live in now. But yeah, when you're giving somebody like Steve a voluntary, chance at a world title, then yeah, I think Top Rank would be silly not to include one because Steve could just win it and run off and fight someone else, just sell it to the biggest payday he can. So yeah, I'm sure there's probably one in. I'm sure, it's that late in the day. Has Steve really had a chance to look over everything? And I'm sure Kevin Cunningham's dealing with that.
Right. Yeah, I think boxing fans have to just accept that rematch clauses are part of the game. And I know there's essentially a rule with mandatories that, if you're the mandatory, there's no rematch clause. There's not supposed to be a rematch clause.
Right.
But people got to understand that when you're a star in boxing and you generate money and views, those rules don't apply to you. I mean, we go back to Anthony Joshua and Usyk. Usyk was a mandatory.
Yeah.
Usyk was a mandatory. So essentially, there shouldn't have been a rematch clause. But it's AJ, it's Anthony Joshua, it's Eddie Hearn, it's Matchroom. AJ is one of the biggest stars, arguably behind Canelo Alvarez worldwide. Arguably, I said, for people who might be yelling at their phones, at their speakers, or at their car stereos or whatever. So they were able to have the pool to bring in a rematch clause. Yeah. But you're right though. It's intriguing for people to always know, like, oh, there was a rematch clause, or this was written in, or that was written in. It's like in any sports, sports contracts and sports financials are interesting to the fans. I know, we've seen people who say like, oh, why do fans care? Fans and media care about fighter pay, or how much financials a certain event did, or this or that. It's been happening like that for years. And it happens in every major sport, especially in the United States. They talk about financials all the time.
It's just interesting because, especially when you look at like weight divisions and how good the fighter is. For example, Jesse Vargas signed that DAZN contract and was getting paid handsomely. And you've got someone like Chocolatito.
And he's fighting again soon on DAZN.
Yeah. And then you've got like Chocolatito, who's arguably one of the best boxers of our generation of whilst we've been watching boxing. And because he fights in an unpopular weight category, was probably getting around half, maybe even less than that of what Jesse Vargas's purses were.
You also got to think about it. Jesse Vargas is is in a higher weight class. I mean, historically, we know that the higher weight classes are the money makers. The higher you are in a weight class, the more money you're going to make, the more exposure you're essentially going to get. Jesse Vargas was in the prime weight class throughout the last 7 or 8 years at welterweight, and then especially when he got that Manny Pacquiao payday. I was at that fight. That was at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. I remember that was after, I think, the HBO deal and Top Rank, or I don't know if Top Rank was still with HBO or HBO didn't want to put on that fight. But I remember Top Rank, they funded that pay-per-view on their own for Pacquiao Vargas. But I remember when Vargas got that fight, I was like, okay, he's set. He was already making good money. But I remember when Vargas got that fight, I was like, okay, he's set. Because when you fight that big name, there's always fighters who come after you, who the promoters are just like, oh, let's fight that guy. He fought Pacquiao. So if you beat this guy, and especially if you beat him faster than Pacquiao did, we can use that in the marketing techniques for you. Like, oh, he took care of this guy faster than Pacquiao did, or whatever. And then Vargas was able to navigate his way through the boxing world very well. He got the Broner payday. He's fighting Liam Smith on DAZN, and like you said, repeating what you said, he signed that agreement with Eddie Hearn and DAZN and Matchroom. I think he was one of the first signees to DAZN when they jumped on.
$1 million a fight. $1 a fight.
Which was smart for him. Hey, man.
When you're fighting people like Humberto Soto, who was like 40 years old.
He did it, man. He did it. You can't hate on the game. He figured it out. But yeah, we'll see, man. I mean, like, kind of going back to the Joe Smith, Steve Geffrard WBO light heavyweight title fight this upcoming Saturday on ESPN and BT Sport. Who do you think? Who's your favorite here? Who are you going with?
I mean, at 7-1 underdog, you need to. I mean, I would favor Joe Smith. I haven't seen enough of Steve Geffrard to be able to tell, to be completely honest with you. But looking at his amateur career and what he's done, and he's with Steve Cunningham. I'm sure Steve Cunningham's not going to waste time on Steve if he's a terrible fighter.
Right.
I would go, like 80% towards Joe Smith and then 20% towards Steve if he can, box from the outside, just keep it long. Obviously, he looks like he's the taller fighter with a longer reach, and just try to make it into a boring fight. He's obviously got good skills. Look at the amateur career that he's had and people that he's been in with.
Right.
So, he can definitely box. But unfortunately, I think everything at the minute is kind of weighed heavily towards Joe Smith Jr. But this could be the first big boxing event and first big shock of 2022. Could be.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to this fight, especially after him getting to know him a little bit more on this week's episode. I know we just kind of previewed this Saturday's fight, but we're going to rewind a little bit here and go to fight reviews from this past Saturday, New Year's Day, the 1st of January, from the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida, on Fox pay-per-view. Luis Ortiz, 33-2, gets the 6-round stoppage over Charles Prince Martin. Ortiz was actually down in rounds 1 and 4, and Martin was down twice in round 6. Okay, first off, this shouldn't have been a Fox pay-per-view, but it was. We've seen some reports about the numbers from
25,000.
That's what Rick Glazer said, but Rick Glazer's been getting a lot of heat the last couple of weeks, especially after we had him on as a guest. That's what he said. We haven't seen any other reports.
That sounds about right, though, right?
I mean, I think everybody realistically, their expectations were low.
Yeah.
For the performance of this fight. I think everybody knows that. But it looks like I felt like I read something last year or so, man. You tell me if I'm wrong or if you remember this, but maybe Fox had an agreement or told PBC or the PBC brass and Al Heyman that they no longer wanted any free fights. I think they wanted all pay-per-view events.
That's what people have been saying. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's what it is. And I think Al Heyman and PBC are just like, okay, well, let's put on some heavyweights. Heavyweights always sell. That's the, you know, that's is that the glamour division, I guess you could say historically. But this was on pay-per-view. It is what it is. I think it was like $39.99, $40 here in the US. Ortiz, like I said, he was down in the first round. And then in the fourth, I remember seeing that. I was like, oh man, okay, and I didn't think that was gonna happen. I knew Ortiz was older, but I was like, okay, well, I still think he's a little bit more experienced. I think he's gonna win it. And then he ends up stopping Charles Martin. Even though I feel, and you tell me if you agree or not, even though I feel this fight should have been stopped earlier, because I think when he connected on Martin was essentially out on his feet.
Yeah. And
the referee didn't step in to even stop it or check on him or even count it as a knockdown.
Very similar to the Alicia Bumgarner and Terry Harper, apart from when that happened, luckily the referee was right on top and he noticed and jumped in. Whereas this one, Ortiz obviously hit him. Martin was out on his feet, kind of against the ropes, wasn't he? Or kind of stumbled backwards to the ropes. The referee was on the other side of the ring and, just wasn't there. Couldn't get there, quick enough. And then Martin went down and obviously kind of had his arm kind of like trapped in the ring. Looked like something from WWE, like where he's all trapped against the ropes and stuff like that. But in general, I mean, it was a decentish fight. You can see, I think Luis Ortiz's chin is kind of going because, on one of the stoppages, like I think he kind of went down by a jab, but he was kind of coming forward and like perfectly kind of like.
It was a good time.
Yeah, like his momentum went straight into it, which knocked him off balance. But he still puts his punches together well. You can still see he's got a good boxing IQ. I actually thought Martin was going to stop him after he dropped him in the first round. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, Martin has got some power in his hands. But, Luis Ortiz kind of managed to old man him and just use his experience really to get himself through. But I think Luis Ortiz now is probably prime for, I think, some of the people in the top end of the division that supposedly used to, avoid him because he was known as the boogeyman. I think now after seeing that performance, I think people may jump on him and add him to their ledger.
Yeah, I mean, who do you think they're preparing Ortiz for? Like, what's the plan here?
Well, he's PBC in it, so it's going to be in-house, dude. It's
I think we know that, but like, I mean, are they setting up is it Frank Sanchez? Frank Sanchez was on the undercard, and we're about to talk about him right now. But I mean, is it Frank Sanchez?
I would maybe slow Frank Sanchez's development down because he looked really bad against Christian Hammer.
I know what. Yeah, we're gonna touch on that his fight right now. But I mean, like,
look at. Sorry, yeah. I mean, look at who they've got. You got Wilder. Obviously, Wilder's fought him twice. Andy Ruiz is like another one. Frank Sanchez, Effie Jagba, who needs to rebuild a little bit, so probably not him. Gerald Washington, but he got smoked on the undercard as well. Looked absolutely terrible. I think that's the main PBC heavyweights, right? Andy Ruiz, maybe. Yeah. Chris Arreola PBC or
he's PBC. Yeah, he's PBC. Well, I mean, I'm assuming he still is. He's been with them for a while now.
He must have a fight coming up because he's in camp. He was on IG today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with Joe Guzan still. He's still looking slim as well.
Well, I mean, he fought when he fought Ortiz. When he fought Ruiz, he looked good. Yeah, he didn't look outmatched or outclassed, and he knocked him down once, and then he buzzed him like another time.
It was the other one. It was when they beat all the records. Kausnaki, when he fought.
And they fought in New York. Yeah,
he looked good in that fight as well.
Yeah, so he's older too. He's in his late 30s, and he's still showing that he has it. So, I don't know what they're saving Ortiz for. Maybe they'll run it back. Maybe they'll run it back between him and Martin. Who knows? I mean, because I know Ortiz wants a title shot. They both want title shots, but I mean, is Ortiz going to get a title shot against Usyk or Tyson Fury anytime soon? No.
Well, if we're to believe all the stuff that's coming out of Eddie Hearn and the Sauerlands, all these guys keep turning down the IBF final eliminator with Hrgovic.
Against Hrgovic, yeah. How many have turned down now? Is it 2 or 3?
supposedly the top 15 turned it down. Like
That's
all
wild.
of them, like Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, everybody. And then I think they're working their way around the list again. And it just seems that nobody wants to fight him.
Isn't that crazy? Like, isn't that so crazy that sometimes people complain like, oh, why is this guy, why is he fighting this guy? But it's like, well, they offered it to the other guys, and but sometimes the offers are bad. Like, people sometimes promoters or representatives go back and forth online in terms of saying, oh yeah, well, we offered them a contract, or we gave them a deal, and it's like, okay, well, how was the deal? Like, was it insulting, or was it an actual fair deal? No, you could say that you offered a contract, but and then say like, oh yeah, we made the attempt and they denied it. It's their fault. It's like, okay, but was it fair? So if Eddie Hearn is saying, okay, they're making their way through the list again, through the top 15, obviously the price has went up. They're going to be like, okay, hey, I know you told us no, but how about we add an extra comma to that, or another zero to that, to that payday, or we add this to the contract or something like that. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do to get somebody from the top 15, not even the top 15, maybe the top 10, essentially.
Yeah.
So
you think someone would take it? Supposedly, the one that they keep talking about now is supposedly Joseph Parker's turned it down after the victory over Chisora. But yeah, it's interesting because that's why they're in the game, right?
Yeah, but it is what it is. Like you touched on earlier, Frank Sanchez also remains undefeated at 20-0 with the 10-round unanimous decision win over Christian Hammer. His stablemate Canelo Alvarez was in attendance to watch his fight here at this Fox pay-per-view event. Like you touched on, Frank Sanchez didn't really look that great in his win. What do you think?
He does some things really well as well for a heavyweight. Like, so at some points, like his movement, and the combination and placements of his shots are really good. But he's similar to Joseph Parker, where you're like, okay, like that was good. Now he looks kind of like buzzed or whatever. Like, step it up, like slip it into third gear, slip it into fourth gear. Like, there's a chance that you can take him out now. But yeah, he just didn't do it. And, and Hammer was kind of playing with him at times, kind of laughing at him. Hammer came in, as a last minute replacement, didn't look in shape, kind of just looked to survive and get a payday and live to fight another day. And I don't know whether after a few rounds, Sanchez was like, don't think I'm going to get him out of here. I'm just going to take the victory over 10. But yeah, not a good performance for the amount of kind of push that we've had behind Frank Sanchez. And maybe we've overdone it just because he's in Reynoso's camp and everyone else in Reynoso's camp is fucking goddamn brilliant. So maybe we've just kind of like pulled him in there.
Right.
Where, I think slowly but surely, I think even though he's 20-0, I think there's still a lot to be worked on.
Yeah. I mean, he's in the Canelo camp. I'm sure he's getting a lot of opportunities. And, it also, you don't think Al Heyman and PBC know, okay, he's on Canelo's team at that stablemate in San Diego, California. If we keep giving him opportunities, that's going to make Canelo and Eddie Reynoso happy, which in turn would help Canelo make a decision in his subsequent bouts to fight on PBC. It's just like Matchroom, whatever Matchroom's doing with they've been doing a lot of Mexico events. I think they're doing one that's upcoming, and a lot of them have been promoted in association with Canelo Promotions and Eddie Reynoso and a lot of Eddie Reynoso's guys. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they've been coming over to the UK and beating up all the UK fighters, all the
exactly
Canelo Promotions signed fighters.
Exactly. So I mean, yeah, I think that's their way. I think Eddie Hearn's doing a little bit, and if you had to ask me, I think Eddie Hearn's has a little bit more involvement in the Canelo sweepstakes right now. But Al Heyman's trying. Heyman's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, obviously, that he always does. But who knows?
Yeah, look at Eddie fireworks show, J Balvin walking him to the ring. Like he knew he's like, hey, I'm rolling the red carpet out and everything else. I'm throwing the kitchen sink at Canelo to keep him.
Yeah, he knows. So, and I mean, it keeps working because I think Eddie Reynoso has said in interviews, when they talk about fights or something like that, I think he has said in interviews when he's getting interviewed in Spanish, like, oh yeah, we have to still go talk. We're going to talk to Eddie. Like he'll throw Eddie's name in there, like nonchalantly, like when they have to talk about their next fight or what's upcoming. I've noticed that. Yeah. There's other times where he's thrown in like, oh yeah, we'll talk to other promoters and stuff like that. He said, but I have to talk to Canelo and then Eddie. But he says it isolated like that in an isolated way. So if you notice like the little details like that in how he answers certain things, that's very, very good for somebody like Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, that they have that type of relationship still.
I mean, the fact that Eddie kind of helps out with Canelo promotions and stuff like that. Like, I don't see him going anywhere else because, like, Matchroom are the only legitimate worldwide promotion. Like, they constantly do shows in Spain, Italy, soon to be Australia, obviously the UK, obviously over here, and elsewhere. Top Rank do shows in China and stuff like that, but these cards are very, very small. They're full of fighters that nobody knows. So they try to say they're worldwide, but they're not. Because if you go on BoxRec and you look at the shows that they do in, like, it's either China or Japan, they're like 3 or 4 fighters, always like homemade fighters. Nobody knows who they are, which is completely different to, what Matchroom do.
Right. I think in that regard, if you want to say worldwide, Matchroom, I think, especially the last 2 years or so, they are legitimately worldwide. Obviously, all these major promoters have the ability to do that, but Matchroom and Eddie Hearn are showing it. So regardless of what people say, if they're fans of him or not, or this or that, the facts are there. Like, Matchroom has had the most shows in the most countries throughout the last 2 years or 3 years or so. They really have. So I don't know. But moving on, the DAZN 2022 boxing schedule was recently released. I'm going to go down the list here, and then we'll touch on. We'll give our quick take on each one of them. Jesse Vargas versus Liam Smith on February 5th. Daniel Jacobs versus John Ryder on February 12th. Jaime Munguia versus Demetrius Ballard on February 19th. Lawrence Okoli versus Michael Cisliak on February 27th. Juan Francisco Estrada versus Chocolatito Gonzalez in their trilogy fight on March 5th in the San Diego, California area. Lee Wood versus Michael Conlon and on March 12th. Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Michael McKinson on March 19th. And Kiko Martinez and Warrington on March 26th for the IBF title in their rematch. Out of all those matchups I just mentioned, which one are you most looking forward to?
I mean, there's only one, isn't there? Juan Francisco Estrada against Chocolatito, the trilogy fight, March 5th. I would say most of the other fights aren't as close, whereas I would say that's a legitimate 50-50.
I think Vargas Liam Smith is actually a pretty close fight, regardless if it's not as exciting. I think it's a close fight.
Oh yeah, I would say it's a close fight. You just, especially with, like, Liam Smith has definitely been a lot more active. Jesse Vargas, you never know what is he. Is this just like another payday for Jesse? Like, we all know that he's running for Congress
of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. When fighters start doing these like side projects and stuff like that, you do wonder like how much is left in, the boxing sphere for him. I think, Jesse has been looking for a road out for a while. He was actually a pretty good, commentator, to be honest with you.
No, he is. He's well spoken.
He speaks really, really well. Just sits on the fence a little bit too much for me. But he was pretty good. That's an interesting fight.
I think Daniel Jacobs, John Ryder is actually more intriguing than people think too.
I think Ryder beats him, to be honest with you. I don't know how much Jacobs has had some big paydays. I thought he lost to Gabe Rosado. I think he's just really looking for some cash out fights now. I think John Ryder still wants it a lot. I think because he's never had a world title. He's always been like the Neely man, especially getting that probably should have beaten Callum Smith, but Callum Smith was on the road to Canelo. I think that's probably why the judges kind of favored him that night. So, he's still got that spite. He's probably still got that chip on his shoulder that, he's never been backed fully, and these close decisions always go against him.
Right. No, you're right. And then Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Michael McKinson,
Interesting.
That's interesting too, but man, I was really pulling that Golden Boy could land a bigger name for Virgil Ortiz. I was really pulling for it. I know this is still an interesting matchup. I know McKinson isn't as known,
no,
but I was really hoping that
he's
Golden
an awkward
Boy
fighter as well.
Yes.
So
yes.
it's a fight where Virgil might not look that good, but on the other hand, I do wonder, does Mickinson have enough power to stop Virgil coming in? So Virgil may still stop him, but if he struggles, Mickinson can be very, very negative and kind of just win rounds. And a lot of his fights go the distance, and they're not that great to watch, but he always manages to nick them. And that's kind of why I think he managed to get where he is now. So it's a fight where Virgil could look, rather bad.
Possibly.
Which then may give some people in his division, maybe Virgil isn't that great, and I will fight him. But I doubt it, because everyone's seen him beforehand, and he's sparred everybody, so a lot of people realize how good he is. But yeah, I totally agree. I would have liked to have seen him in there with kind of the sort of people that Conor Ben's now going for, fighting like a Chris Algieri, like a Keith Thurman, guys that are kind of on, coming down the other side of the hill, like an Amir Khan, Kell Brook, somebody like that. But, he's still young, and I'm sure he'll get all those guys eventually.
I don't see. So Spence Ugas, everybody knows that that's likely the next fight for both of them. That's kind of been rumblings about it. I don't see anybody else as opponents for either of them right now. I think that's the next matchup for both of them. And Ortiz is already the number one rated. Is it the IBF or the WBO?
WBO.
Is it WBO? Yeah. So for Terrence Crawford's belt, do you think that Golden Boy reached out to not even top rank, but maybe to Terrence Crawford, and they asked Terrence Crawford, hey, do you want Ortiz? Or do you think Golden Boy said, you know what, let's have one more fight, and then we'll try to go after Terrence Crawford or one of the bigger guys? Because Crawford's obviously going to wait around to see who wins between Ugas and Spence. I don't see him fighting until that fight happens, and then he can really make a statement to get the winner.
I think the problem you have is Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn and other guys have spoken, is I think Terrence Crawford seems to think he's this $6 million man, where in all reality he's not. He's been significantly overpaid by Top Rank, and that's why they let one of their world champions leave, because he doesn't put enough bums on seats to cover the amount of money that he wants. And I think that's probably why someone like a Golden Boy is what, we'd love to, pretty essentially try to buy the world title from you and, bring you in so Virgil Ortiz can get his chance. But I think the purse, it's just too big. And that's why, we haven't seen Crawford snapped up by anybody yet. Unfortunately, it would be interesting to see, whether they stick him in with a Josecito Lopez. That's both Golden Boy. They're actually in the same camp. Easy fight. Pardon me. Easy fight to make, because unfortunately for Virgil, unless he gets himself into a mandatory position, everybody else is on, that famous line of on the other side of the street over at PBC.
Right. Who do you think? Do you think PBC? This is probably an easy answer, but I'll ask it anyways. Do you think PBC gives Boots Ennis a shot at a world title against Spence or Ugas first before Crawford.
Oh, does Ennis get a shot before Crawford?
Actually, that's not an easy answer. I don't know why I thought it would be easy.
I would imagine that would go down to if Crawford signs for them.
Yes.
If Crawford signs and says, what, PBC does something like, we want 3 fights. You can have Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, and then we'll give you a shot at the world title because obviously, we want to get 3 paydays out of you. If he does that, if it's just a 1 fight, like he thinks he's a Canelo, he thinks he's a big enough commodity that he can just sign 1 fight deals, then no. Then someone like Ennis will get a world title shot when PBC believe that the expiration date of one of their world title holders is, coming close. They'll then recycle it and give it to Ennis, and Ennis will be, the world champion for a good long while. I imagine he's still very young.
Right. And then obviously we'll touch on Keith Thurman, his bout against Mario Barros, a couple weeks as their fight is at the end of the month. But Keith Thurman, when everybody, quickly touching on Thurman before we move on. Thurman, when all the welterweights were coming up, he was a guy for me. Like I picked him. I was like, that's going to be your standout. That's who I thought. And then, inactivity, and then it just kind of I remember he got married and which is great. Congratulations to him. But like you can see that he didn't have the same passion for it anymore. And it just didn't work out for him. And in that inactivity, then he had like injuries, surgeries, and all that stuff. But he was always the guy to me. I was like, that's gonna be your number 1 guy, and he was for a while. He was, but then inactivity.
That's why I always greatly respect people like, Canelo, because Canelo's been doing it for nearly 15 years. How old is he? Like he's like 28, something like 13 to 15 years since he turned pro at
30.
15.
I think he's 30, 31, 32. Yeah.
There you go. And he's made crazy amounts of money, and he still has that hunger and drive. That's the difference between, like being a legendary legacy fighter like a Canelo than being just a very, very good world champion like Keith Thurman. Canelo's made bundles of money, and he could have just been like, nah, I'll just turn up to the gym, I'll do the bare minimum, and, I'll still get paid 20 to 30 million. And before he knows it, his career's gone. But no, he still goes there all the time after his fights, keeps himself in shape, doesn't drink, doesn't do anything crazy that we know of. And he's still out there challenging the best. That's the difference between being like 1%.
I think he does drink. I think I've seen
yeah.
But it seems like he's responsible about it, at least.
Right.
He's disciplined. But DAZN boxing schedule. Showtime is supposedly supposed to release their Showtime schedule for this year, or at least the first quarter or two, probably the first 2 quarters. So hopefully we get that soon. And that'll be interesting because, like you touched on, the Showtime and Fox combination. How many pay-per-views are we going to see? That's true. We'll see how it comes out from in that regard. News and notes as we round towards the finish line of this week's episode, and our return episode after the holidays. So we appreciate you listening to this week's episode of The Last Round. The WBC recently extended the free negotiation period between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. It was set for a purse bid on January 18th. The WBC have given both sides a little extra time to come to terms before sending the bout to a purse bid. What do you think happened here?
I think they're going to have to come to some kind of conclusion. Like, I hope so. The funny thing is obviously, like you touched on there, January the 18th, Frank Warren said in a recent IFL TV interview that Tyson Fury is fighting March 26th, regardless of what happens. So have they already got the inkling that Dillian Whyte's not going to fight him? Because that's only 2 months away. And they've already touched on fighting Robert Helenius and Andy Ruiz, right? Andy Ruiz was the second name, I believe. So, yeah, that's not that far away. So it's very intriguing, unless that just was unless that was a ploy to kind of say to Dillian White, like, hey, we've already got 2 backups, so you need to just accept 20% and just get on with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like they're still going to find a way to put Dillian White aside. I just think the WBC might not, just doesn't want him involved in, and, and Bob Arum, like, they don't want Eddie Hearn to get a piece of it again. Like, like they don't want him involved. Like I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm interested to see who Tyson Fury fights on March 26th. If it's not Dillian White, who's he going to fight? Who are they going to put in there? As a, is it going to be him?
I believe so, because I think that when Tyson Fury's commanding 10, 15, 20 million for a purse, Helenius would probably be the cheapest option, and a fairly easy fight. Andrew Ruiz still has that, ex-world champion from beating Anthony Joshua, so I'm sure his purse is substantially higher than Robert Helenius.
Right. No, you're right. Yeah. Or maybe Kaunaski.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a good draw in New York if they want to fight in the UK, in the US. Sorry,
it could be. You never know. You never know. But it is what it is. And then finally, Ryan Garcia and Oscar De La Hoya have been, tweeting and posting stuff about Isaac Cruz, who just recently fought a good battle against Tank Davis in Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles. They both been tweeting saying that they're trying to make a fight with him. Then Sean Gibbons of Manny Pacquiao Promotions was tweeting back at them. I think it's just interesting that Ryan Garcia, when the fight was over with Tank Davis and Cruz, Ryan Garcia was saying that, I think at one point he said that Cruz was like a C-level fighter and kind of playing him down as an opponent. And now he's trying to get the fight with him, and I still think Cruz, even in a fight like this, I still think it's dangerous. I still think it's dangerous. And I know Garcia has a height advantage and stuff, but I don't think people might say, like, I've seen posts and stuff like that online in boxing forums where people are saying, oh yeah, Garcia knocks him out, or that's easy work or something like that. Like, no, like Cruz just went and fought a really good fight against arguably the killer at 135 in Tank Davis. And he fought really, really well. He fought a close battle to the point where even some people thought he probably deserved the win. So, I don't know. But I know how Golden Boy's looking at it. Like, okay, Cruz is Mexican. They can put this fight on in LA and draw a really good crowd, which it's very important. And then Garcia obviously has his fan base. I can totally see that, especially from Golden Boy's perspective. But let's see if that happens. I don't think Al Heyman and PBC, because I think Cruz has some type of an agreement with PBC right now, even though he's with Manny Pacquiao Promotions. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Al Heyman and PBC are going to purposely, unless they offer him a substantial amount of money, Golden Boy offers him a substantial amount of money, I don't think this fight is going to happen. So, I hope Golden Boy and Ryan Garcia have some backup opponents. I mean, who do you think? What do you think about the situation, and who do you think would be some realistic backup opponents for Ryan Garcia in his comeback fight, if you want to call it that?
Like you touched on earlier when you were talking about offers, I'm sure, Oscar's probably made them an offer, but what was the offer? Was it something substantially low? But he can turn around to social media and say, oh, we made an offer to Isaac Cruz. He turned it down. He's ducking. He's scared. Like you just touched on. In all reality, I think we kind of know what Ryan's like. I'm sure Ryan will come back and he'll have a warm-up fight. They'll say that he needs something just to make sure his hand's right after, pulling out with the fight before and obviously being off with some type of hand injury. Something that can be made in-house, and something I texted you recently, Hector Tanahara. I could see that. Masito Hester.
And they're both Golden Boy fighters too.
Easy, in-house.
I would like those. I think those are good matches. I prefer probably the Mercito Hesta fight.
He's short, so it's
he is short, but like he fought Jorge Linares, and he actually fought a good fight against Linares, even though he lost. Like he actually had some pretty good moments in that fight. I mean, I know Tanahara's tall, so that makes a little bit more. I don't know. I like both fights, but I mean, I probably prefer the Hesta fight. I just think Hesta has a little bit more pop in his punches than Tanahara. But who knows? I honestly, like, I could totally see that. There's also Jojo Diaz, who's also a Golden Boy fighter.
They should. Jojo put it on Twitter. I retweeted it and just sort of said, like, you know, Jojo will pretty much fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. And, you know, you have to love that, this new Jojo Diaz. But I just don't see Ryan doing it. I'm sure Ryan, if you were Golden Boy looking from the outside at what Ryan's like and stuff like that, I think you can see that his career is going to be pretty short. Right. And it's going to be full of pullouts and injuries and stuff like that. So if you were Golden Boy, you'll probably be like, okay, we need to wrap him in cotton wool. Try to get as many fights out of him as we can because of his social media following, and, you know, try to get as much money from him as we can. Because I think when he loses, I'm sure he's going to take it pretty badly. Just because of how he seems to be as a person. I don't know him, but, you know, just looking from the outside in at the struggles that he's had in his life, I don't think that if he gets beaten, he's going to take it very well.
Yeah, that's just us analyzing the situation of what we've seen of him in interviews and being around his fights and what have you. But who knows? We'll see how it goes. But thanks again for joining us, guys. Our big thanks to Steve Geffrard, who fights this Saturday, as we mentioned, against Joe Smith Jr. on ESPN, a top rank event. Good luck to him in his quest for the WBO light heavyweight title. Big thanks for coming on the last round. Thank you guys for listening in our first episode of 2022 of this new year. We apologize for not being back for the last couple of weeks. We took a couple of weeks off for the holidays, but we are back with your consistent and weekly boxing episodes, obviously, that we're delivering to you on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Check us out. We're all over the place. And speaking all over the place, Mike, go ahead and tell our listeners and followers where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to join us next week. We'll be obviously reviewing the Joe Smith Jr. Fight and previewing the Gary Russell Jr. against Magasayo?
Magasayo.
For the WBC World Featherweight title, that yearly Gary Russell Jr. fight.
And in the first one of 2022, for my co-host, Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round.